All right. Good morning, guys. I am back with another video as I promised to have uploaded for you. Now, as we get ready for Module 2, Learning Module 2, that covers chapters 7 through 11. And I'll be very brief with chapters 7 through 11 because the chapters are very detailed. So I do advise you to go back and review because there might be something on some of these exams that you're taking now that may be on the cumulative or vice versa. So you might see something that you didn't see before that might be on the cumulative. So definitely go back and review the content just to prepare yourself for the cumulative so you could take it and it'd be easy and it'd be done and you could take it fast. But you do have a couple attempts, like all the other quizzes, in terms of taking the cumulative exam, but that's not until end of July, which will be here before you know it. Vocabulary quiz in Learning Module 1. Now, to create it, it was a little wonky, and that's my fault. So as a result, I will curve everybody's grade based on the person who got the highest score. So right now, the highest score is an 80. So that means everybody will have an additional 20 points added to their vocabulary quiz in Learning Module 1. Now, I'm hoping that in Learning Module 2, it's not like that, but if it is, I'll monitor it closely and keep you guys posted. And as always, to prepare for the vocabulary quiz, as a reward of you watching this video, all you gotta do is email me, hey, Ms. Nesbitt, I need a copy of the words to help with the quiz. Just shoot me an email and I'll get it to you as soon as possible. Now, a few things. This learning module goes into the 4th of July. So I am offline from that Friday all the way until Tuesday, July 6th. Okay, but I will be monitoring progress to make sure everybody has the opportunity to make sure that they see all the content, making sure there's no technical issues. But of course, during that process, if there's something that I can't do or you can't get a hold of me, definitely scroll all the way down to your page and reach out to Blackboard for support. Also, if you send me an email during that weekend, there might be a automated response, and that automated response has details of who you can reach out to just in case you can't get a hold of me or vice versa. Okay, so definitely be mindful of those announcements. Now I'll get right into the learning modules. Like I said, 7 through 11. You have 3 different tasks that you need to complete. The hybrid task is optional, but it is helpful. So not saying that it's part of your grade, but if you do it, it does help your final grade. So make sure you take advantage of that opportunity to complete that. But also know that you have your content quiz that I go in and grade behind you, and your vocab quiz will grade automatically for you. Okay, so a few things about chapter 7. Okay, just gonna go right into it and just kind of hop right in. Okay, chapter 7 talks about your 3 fundamental movement skills, your skills that enhance stability, basically that secures yourself, things you could do while you're in a standing or stable position. Your locomotor skills are the skills that require you to that travel you, and definitely take some time to look in your book and to really assess all of those skills, because this particular section does cover a lot of human development over lifespan. So you got your running and you got your walking. Hold on one second. I didn't set my timer. I've been talking for 5 minutes and then I got 15 minutes. Give or take, give me about 19 minutes. So when we're talking about your different skills as far as movement is concerned, okay, you want to take some time to read chapter 7 because that might be some content on your cumulative test that covers the different stages or the different aspects to look for in lifespan when it comes to walking. Like, how does a 2-year-old walk? Mind you, walking is a new concept. So how does a 2-year-old walk compare to how a 9-year-old walks? Okay. And so going into knowing what to look for during a gait cycle or walking is very important for you to know as future strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, that type of thing. Okay. So you also need to know the differences between the whole body versus component. Okay. Like I said, definitely go into chapter 7 and review each locomotor skill or review each skill to get a better assessment as far as how you can determine what's going on with your particular client or student. Okay. Chapter 8, it talks about the one thing that we're kind of scared to do, but we're going to do it anyway as long as we're healthy and alive: aging. Okay. So it's important for you to know the difference between biological and chronological and physical aging. Okay. So those are very important things that I know for sure will definitely be on your exam. So definitely go in there and definitely get very familiar with those concepts. Also, there is another concept that we all should be familiar with, including myself as a professional, is ageism. Okay. Ageism is the act of discrimination on somebody or having or making assumptions on somebody based on their age. For example, you might come across a client, if you're going into personal training, you might come across a client who might want to be a bodybuilder at 67. It's totally possible. It's totally possible for individuals to be bodybuilders at any age, depending on their stage of development. So you always want to keep those things in mind, but you don't want to automatically assume just because they are at that particular age that they can't do. All right. So as future professionals, it's important for you to do your assessments, and it's important for you to make the proper judgment call, but don't be discriminatory against those who might want to participate in something. And it's assumed that someone thinks that they can't participate or do something because of their age. That is completely false. All right. So also, you need to be mindful of peak performances in particular sports, in Olympic sports, and different peak performances and changes in older adults. Older adults being sometimes that age changes. So it's 55 and up or 65 and up. Okay, we're just going to say 65 and up because my mom would hurt me if I considered her an older adult. But basically 65 and up, and some of the changes in peak performance with older adults and senior citizens. Okay, and it's important for you to know those differences in terms of aerobic activity, muscular strength, nervous system, cardiovascular system, knowing about how the circulatory system works. Yes, so get to know, if you have anatomy with me in the next summer session or in the fall, get familiar with the heart. Okay, get familiar with the heart and how it pumps. Okay, and its function. All right, so those things are very important for you to know. And just in general, if you wanted to get into personal training, knowing how the heart works is vital. Okay, so definitely get to know all of the systems and how it's impacted by peak performance and aging. Now, in chapter 9, that's where it talks about the physical development over a lifespan. So, for example, I'm pretty sure you might remember, or some of you guys are still going to a pediatrician. I stopped going to a pediatrician at 21. So I remember these. Okay. So there's always, your pediatrician is always going to compare you to a growth chart. Okay. So the growth chart, what that does for the pediatrician or the medical practitioner is that it tells them that the patient, which is a minor or an adolescent, a young adolescent, especially up to from 18 to 21, as a young adolescent, how they are growing, and ensure that they are in a particular percentile that determines that they're growing properly and there's no delays. Now, what I mean by there's no delays, sometimes when there is a potential nervous system or cardiovascular system, or there's an issue with bones that grow, because bones are going to continue to grow. They always regenerate themselves, but bones are growing as you move through adolescence, as you move through childhood. Make sure that that particular child is in a positive growth curve. Okay, so you might hear the pediatrician say something like, "Oh, well, this person is in the 60th percentile or in the 90th percentile." It just tells us that this is a positive change for this particular adolescent. Okay, you always want to see positive changes in your adolescent as far as testing and measurements are concerned in motor learning and development. Okay, so when you are teaching kids how to walk or run or participate in a particular manipulative skill, okay, you can always kind of put those numbers together and look at the growth curve. Of course, there are always limitations to these curves. There's always going to be some errors to these curves. Okay, you might have a child who might be really long, and it's projected that they're going to be really tall. So those things, and sometimes it may not always end up that way. So just be mindful that there's always going to be errors in these curves. Okay. Now, to talk about proprioception is important and it can be developed. I like to tell people through just the obvious reason, just being flexible. Okay. Being flexibility is another important aspect in terms of aging and growth and development. Proprioception helps with generating the sense of body awareness and spatial awareness. Oftentimes or sometimes not everybody's fully aware of what's on their body, what's around their body, and how to manipulate their body. So proprioception plays a large role in such. Now, chapter 10 definitely goes deeper into aging and posture awareness. All right. So there are two types of aging that you need to know: primary and secondary aging. Secondary aging could be just environmental, and primary, obviously, as we get older, there's going to be body systems that are just not going to be the same in your 20s. Okay. So I'm definitely feeling the side effect of that. Actually, I feel healthier than I did in my 20s now in my late 30s. So it's just a fact of life. So you need to know the difference between those two different types of aging. And going over into body stature, we've heard about osteoporosis. Now, one thing before I go into osteoporosis and talking about blood pressure, you got modifiable risk factors and you got non-modifiable risk factors. Okay, so talking about osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is the process of, just in a nutshell, just the breakdown of bones. Okay, just in a coverall nutshell. It's not the perfect definition, but just trying to serve it to you as easy as possible. And not one of those non-modifiable risks about osteoporosis is that it's going to impact women no matter what. Okay, so and like me, or like I've experienced with other relatives in my family, some of our relatives have started to shrink. Okay, one of them is my grandmother. One of them is my aunt, who started to shrink as a result of slight osteoporosis. And of course, the benefits to preventing that is always engaging in strength training. Now, you're going to shrink regardless, ladies. That's just a fact of life. However, it could be significantly slowed down when strength training is properly incorporated into just daily living. Okay. And it talks about kyphosis, where there's a rounding of the back. And oftentimes it can happen to us pretty quickly, especially by occupation. Especially if you're we've been home for a year, and most of us have been sitting like this all year. So it's very important to be mindful of those factors in body stature and ways to prevent it or correct it. Okay, so those are things you just need to be mindful of. Okay, now going into, like I said, chapter 10 covers a lot of things in terms of in terms of aging and the different body systems to be mindful of during the process. Another thing that you should be mindful of before I go into chapter 11 is the process of sensory changes. Okay, hearing changes, vision changes. I was not always in glasses, but actually, I've been in glasses since I was 22. So, but early on, I was never in glasses. But those are the things that you should be mindful of in terms of training those who might be in the older population. Now, one thing I will say is that you notice that I skipped chapter 6. Okay, chapter 6 talks about motor development and learning in infants and newborns. Okay, so if you want to read that chapter on your own, that's fine. I won't quiz you on it. I won't test you on it. Some of you guys are like, oh, well, I'm not doing it. But, especially those who might be interested in working with infants and children or young children, babies, toddlers, okay, going into preschool, then feel free to go over and review that particular chapter. That chapter does cover a lot of details about growth and development during that phase, okay? But going back into chapter 10, where it talks about the different systems to be mindful of. So as babies, I said that because as babies, as they evolve and they develop, they respond to their senses. So, that's how babies are able to hear and say things, because they hear what you're saying. They can respond to those senses. Same thing with touch. Same thing with just feeling warm. They always know when a parent is around. Most babies, obviously can smell. And so they know that's a sense. They know when they're around a parent or a familiar body. Okay. So they are going to always respond to their senses. Now, the older we get, that's when those senses change. Okay. So as older Americans, we talk about driving. Driving is an important factor because those senses are not as keen as they are like now. Some people just like to run red lights. We like to get on 75 and we like to do 90, right? We like to do 90 miles per hour because we can. We're alert, we're awake. However, it could change the older we get. So we probably should not be driving 90 anyway, but we're less inclined to drive that fast because our response times changes as we get older. So those are things to just be mindful of in terms of studying the sensory changes that older Americans, and not even just older Americans, it could be an adolescent or middle adult is what they call it, who are experiencing sensory changes already. Like for some, it could be vision, like myself. For some, also, well, I will say this, sometimes when one sense is weakened, another sense is heightened. So because I have astigmatism, right? I could smell everything. So, but those are just things to be mindful of, as well as hearing. Hearing changes too, but of course, there's so many pieces of information that talk about the importance of protecting your hearing as a result of us putting AirPods and all this stuff in our ear. So that's pretty much chapter 11 in a nutshell. Now, chapter 10. Now, chapter 11, I will admit, is a little bit of a boring chapter, but it's very vital for you to go over, where it talks about the 4 stages of intellectual development. Okay, where it talks about the sensory motor, where like I said, babies are going to respond to what they hear, what they see, what they sense or smell. You have your pre-operational, which is ages 2 to 7, where it talks about where it covers the concept of thinking. However, the thinking should be is on a more of a me standpoint. Okay, I'm gonna do this for me. I want this for me. Okay, and if you are working with children in this age group, oftentimes you need to know the different types of play that are not only what they're going to be involved in, but encourage the type of play that really helps to shape and mold them into good experiences. Some not only good experiences on the cognitive and emotional standpoint, but on the physical standpoint. So you need to know the 2 different types of play, being cooperative and parallel. All right, so I'll let you go into that. Like I said, if it's not here, then we'll definitely cover that in another section. Okay, then you got concrete operational, which is ages 7 through 11, where it is more developed, but it's based on what they've experienced in their life so far. Okay, so maybe they had a good championship game and they had a good experience with the championship game. And so they're going to remember those events and remember those movements to repeat a positive experience. Now, formal operational is 11 and up. Okay, where you could take all your logic and all your ideas and you can ask questions and you can present questions and that's when the questions to the adults that can't answer questions, that's where they come into play. They definitely question logic. Okay, so just know those different types of the intellectual development, and it's so important for you to know those things in terms of movement and motor control. All right, so then you have your knowledge types, which you should get to know, and you have the important one, as I'm looking at my notes, attention and memory. All right, so that's the reason why I have a timer here, 3 minutes and 21 seconds left, because y'all's attention is probably as short as mine. Okay, but that's something that you should be mindful of, how attention is operating in a particular task and activity. Some people have the know how to focus their attention on a particular task, but some people can't. I'm one of those people. I can't do it. Sometimes it's a struggle, but I get it done. And then memory. Okay, we process our memory processes through things that hold meaning to it. So then knowing the difference between long-term and short-term memory. And then last but not least, one thing to be mindful of, where it talks about sports expertise. Okay. Sports expertise does not mean you are the new Stephen Smith, that you can sit there and you can just talk about sports all day because you talk about it. But sports expertise is not only that, but it's also the physical, the physiological, the logic, the intellectual aspect of it. So with every experience that you may have had, like I said, maybe you had a good baseball game at 12. Okay. You always want to keep that in mind. You always keep those pieces of what your coach told you to have a good baseball game. And you take those pieces and you grow and you develop those pieces. Maybe you want to improve your speed. Maybe you want to improve muscular strength. Maybe you want to improve your power. So those are things that you could do. It's like taking what you've known or grown as a sport or what you learned about this sport and enhancing it and learning how to develop it. So that's really the core of sports expertise. Okay. So that just pretty much covers 7 through 11. Okay. Don't forget your discussion posts. Don't forget your content quiz. Those two things I grade. So make sure you do it. And as soon as I get a grade, I post it. And if you want to go back in there, I believe content and I think your content quiz, you can go in there multiple times. Your discussion post, you can only go in there once. You don't have to worry about responding to your discussion posts as far as responding to other classmates, but do make sure that you go into your syllabus and follow the rubric and how to submit your discussion post, because I am grading that very closely in lieu of having you respond to your classmates. All right. So as always, if you have any questions, let me know. I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.